All right, so one of the readings in this unit is by Hogler and his co authors, and it's modeling union membership and the effect of uh, business environments on union membership. And I want to take a little time to go through the math from this article because there's a good chance that you've been exposed to linear regression before, but I know the numbers can get a little confusing at times. Luckily, this article is pretty straightforward in its use of linear regression to predict union membership. And since there's a focus on right to work in this unit, we're going to look at how the math works out with the effect of right to work on union membership. So, the equation in this research modeling union membership goes something like this. So, you have union equals alpha plus B1 that's supposed to be sock, not suck. Okay, so this is the equation, the basic equation from this research. So we're predicting union membership and we're using several different measures to do so. Now, alpha in this equation is just your constant, so that's the y-intercept. Uh, what's union membership when uh, everything in the equation is zero? Now, in the actual article, there's one more term here because they account for several other things that they don't specify control variables in the article. But we're just going to look at the basic equation. Down here is our error term. This accounts for what we miss in the model. What are we not accounting for that might predict union membership? ULP is a measure of unfair labor practices. This is a common measure used for what's the business opposition, what's the what's the opposition to labor unions. So if there's a lot of unfair labor practice complaints filed, then you have a state that is not very friendly to labor. SOC is a measure of social capital. We'll just leave it at that for now, since that's not really what we're focused on. Right to work is a dichotomous measure of whether the state is right to work or not. And then demo is the percentage of voters that voted for the Democratic candidate in the most recent presidential election. Most recent is in most recent from when this article was published. So the reason that this is included, so the reason that a social capital measure is included is because states that have higher social capital or localities that have higher levels of social capital would be more likely to have more union membership because there's a sense of community, so to speak. Right to work would be dichotomous variable, so that it's either a 1 or a 0 because the state's either right to work or not right to work. And then obviously a state that's right to work would be expected to have lower union membership. And then Democratic Party vote is basically an ideological measure. So generally speaking, the Democratic Party has been a bigger supporter of labor unions, and labor union members are generally supporters of the Democratic Party. So if you have a higher percentage of Democrats in the state, you might expect that state to be more pro-union than other states. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to look at an average state. So not the specific outcome for any one state, but we'll plug in the average here. And first we have to plug in, so these are coefficients. We have to plug in the values that are in the model to then determine the effect of each of these variables. So let's plug in the coefficients first. So we have union, so our constant, the y-intercept in this equation, is actually 11.92 plus this B1 is a negative 0.98. ULP. B2 in the equation, whoops, just cross that out, is negative 0.93 times SOC. Again, that's SOC, not SOC. There we go. Plus negative 6.60 for right to work. Plus 0.16 for demo, plus your error. Okay, so what this means is when everything in the model is at 0, then your intercept would be 11.92. Everything else would cancel out in the model, and then your union membership in a state with 0 unfair labor practices, 0 social capital, not right to work, and 0 of the voters voting for the Democratic Party candidate would have 11% union membership. Now, that's not actually, we never see that in the real world, so we have to plug in numbers that actually mean something, because we know that you never have 0 for, say, Democratic Party support. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to plug in the means of all of these except right to work. So the mean value in the data set of all 50 states or 48 or how many ever they used, sometimes some states have to be dropped because you can't get measures. The mean value is 4.2 for unfair labor practices on their scale of, I'm sure it's a ratio, so there aren't actually only 4 unfair labor practices filed. The mean for the social capital measure is 0.02. Now we're not going to plug in the mean for right to work because that wouldn't make a lot of sense. So we could say, like, okay, we have a state with average unfair labor practices, and we have a state with average social capital, however, whatever index is being used to measure that. And we have a state with average Democratic Party support. But we don't really have states that have an average amount of right to work. It's either a 1 or a 0. You're either right to work or you're not, so we're going to plug in a 1. So we're going to say this is an average state, an otherwise average state that's right to work. And so that means we're going to plug in the average. The average in that past election, this article's like a decade old now, if not more. So that might be, average Democratic Party turnout for a state in 2004 or something. So that's a 45. The average here is 45.37, and then we have our error. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're multiplying and adding to get to what union membership would be predicted by the model in a state that is average in all of the ways measured except for right to work. So it's simple multiplication and addition. Union equals 1.92 plus, this is going to be negative 5.18 plus negative 0.0186, and I'm going to round, so some of these decimals will drop off and there will be some rounding errors. So 1 times negative 6.60 is obviously negative 6.60 plus 7.26 plus our error, which we're never going to know. We're not going to know what our error really is. Okay, so you add that all up. And you get 13.98, and this is union percent of membership. And this is for an otherwise average right to work state. So average in all other ways. You would expect 13.98% of the state to be unionized, of union membership. Now, if we want to know this same, so we're taking the same average state. This is the average for unfair labor practices, average social capital, average Democratic Party support, and we want to know, well, what happens if it's not right to work? So what's the effect of right to work? Well, the effect of right to work is about negative 6.5. So the same state, if it didn't have right to work, would have union membership at about 20%, 20.58%. So this would be if it's not right to work. The same state if it didn't have right to work. So the effect of right to work found in this article is about 6% of union membership. So right to work states have a significantly less union membership than non-right to work states. Now, if you wanted to predict union membership for a specific state, say you don't really, or a specific region, or if you wanted to know, so obviously these numbers are going to come out different for different states. If you have a state that is a strong Republican state, then this number is going to be lower. You're going to have fewer voters coming out for the Democratic Party candidate. This is going to multiply by this. You're going to get a smaller number here, and then you're going to get an even smaller number over here. But this is how the linear regression equation for the Hogler article works in predicting the and determining the effect of right to work on union membership. Thank you.